Welcome back.
Oh, we're back.
It's Higurashi.
We're excited to get more feelings with
Yes.
Rena.
I'm very excited. I'm like, it's a very different experience doing even just the first 3 chapters of this arc to anything we've done on this show before. Which is like really interesting and very engaging in a unique way.
I'm doing experimental stuff. I'm talking about my feelings. It's great.
Yeah. Like, again, it's something I want to get more into in the recaps, but like one of the interesting things for me is that trying to decide in my mind whether like this story is not particularly well written because I'm not engaging with the text at face value, or whether the way that it presents it is specifically I can't engage with it because it's not something that I have ever experienced.
This is the fun part of like empathy and like, because that's what stories, in my mind, the point of stories, there are 2 points. One is to teach morals, but the second, which goes along with that, the only way you teach morals in these stories is by presenting characters that we can empathize with. Like if we don't know that it's 2 little innocent kids running off in the woods, we're not going to care when they get eaten by a grue. You know, if you're just like some guy went in the woods who got eaten by a grue, you're like, whatever. But if it's 2 kids with a family that's poor and the father wants to keep them and the mother's the evil stepmom and da-da-da, like you've got this narrative that's built up, then you're going to care about it. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be something really interesting to talk about going through. I'm interested to see whether your reread, your like edit of the series changes your perspective. It's going to be a moment like that, because I know we had that with Higurashi, and I'm very interested to see you do that. And I also want to promise that I won't constantly be comparing the 2 arcs, even though in my mind, like, I can do nothing.
I will not hold you to that promise because I don't believe it.
Fair enough.
Let's
fair
go.
enough. All right. Whew. My mother was a very busy woman. The harder she worked, the more her work was valued, and she kept getting promoted. She sought to go high and high. She was always shining, and she was my hero. My mother started her career as a fashion designer at a small clothing factory in Okonomiya. My father was a designer too. They met through their jobs and soon got married. They lived in a small apartment in Okonomiya, but they moved to my grandma's house, our current house in Hinamiya, when she got pregnant with me. We lived there until right before I went to elementary school. Now that I think about it, that was the happiest time of my life. I felt happy every day and believed without a doubt that tomorrow would be the same. I was so happy that I took it for granted and didn't even feel the happiness. I really did feel happy every day. I was small at that time and didn't really understand what was going on, but it seemed like the company my parents were working for was having some financial difficulties. So my mother and a few other young designers started talking about leaving the company and going independent. After many things happened and the situation grew complicated, they got an offer to work at a big design firm in Ibaraki, and they took the offer. At that time, I heard my mother saying many difficult words like limited partnership and business alliance, but in short, what she wanted to do was move to Ibaraki. My mother and her peers were hired because their talent and experience made them immediate assets at their new company. However, my father wasn't one of them. Unfortunately, my father wasn't as talented as my mother was, so moving to Ibaraki meant that my father had to give up being a fashion designer. My mother's new company had high expectations of her talent and promised her a responsible project. She didn't want to waste her growing talent and passion by living in a rural town like Hinamizawa, so my mother convinced my father to quit his job and move to Ibaraki to support her and to help her build a career. Back then, moving meant I had to say goodbye to my close friends. I didn't want to move and I kept crying about it. After we moved to Ibaraki, my mother was a big success. Not only did she have a great leadership skill, she was full of energy, and I believe she made the best use of her talents to succeed. She came home late every night and barely had any days off. When she had a big project, she often stayed entire nights at her office. But when she came home, she always looked fulfilled and wore a happy smile that she had never worn when she was in Hinamizawa. She was shining, and I remember I always wanted to shine like her when I grew up. On the other hand, my father wasn't doing so well. He couldn't find a job as a fashion designer, so he took a clerical job at a small company, but he kept changing positions. He couldn't use the experience that he had cultivated, and it was very hard for him. But he was very understanding. He started to take care of things around the house for my mother, who got busier and busier, having one project after another. He cleaned the house, did laundry, and came to my school events. Wherever he couldn't cook, he did cook rice, but always bought side dishes from a grocery store. We ate dinner without my mother more and more often. I mean, yeah.
Is this a voice that's going to come up again?
I assume that this is... Yeah, I mean, I could just take the flashback.
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
It's your flashback.
Let's just do it. I guess she's busy again. Every time I said that, he always told me, your mother is working very hard, so let's support her, Rena. That was what he always told me. I decided to help my father with the cooking. I thought it was a good idea to learn how to cook since he wasn't good at it. Whenever my mother cooked, I helped her and tried to learn how to cook from her. She apologized for not having enough time to cook for us, but she was happy that I was learning. I think I wrote in my school yearbook that I wanted to be a clothing designer in the future just like my mother, but apparently I lacked my mother's exceptional sense of style. She used to tell me, taste is something that you're born with, not something that you cultivate.
That's just untrue.
I remember I was discouraged to be a designer because of that. That was why I decided to reach her by getting better at things she wasn't so good at, instead of trying to be like her. I wanted to be good not only at cooking, but also at doing things around the house, such as cleaning, doing the laundry, grocery shopping. I remember my father was really happy that I did all that for him because he wasn't good at it at all. He couldn't find a job and spent a lot of time at home, so he seemed to enjoy spending time doing the housework with his daughter more than anything. I started to become better and better at filling in for my mother, and she started to get too busy to do any of the housework at all, and she moved on to a more responsible position at her job. She took me out to many places as if to compensate for leaving me alone all the time. She used to say, let's go eat something delicious without telling your father, and took me out to a restaurant. She took me to high-class restaurants and amusement parks. Sometimes it was only me and my mother, sometimes it was her friends from work. She took me to a beach barbecue one summer with those friends. I was introduced as her daughter, and every one of them pampered me. I still remember there was this one guy who particularly doted on me. He was a good-looking young man. I called him Uncle once, and he got mad at me. He was nice and tan with dyed brown hair. This young man often came with us when we went out. When my mother took me somewhere, she usually made several phone calls for her work during the day, and sometimes she took me to a place where she could also do her work at the same time. So I didn't feel awkward when people from her work came with us, but I always preferred to be alone with her, so I was happy when we could do that. One day, she took me to a very high-end part of town. Of course, she always spoiled me whenever we went out. She bought me things and let me eat whatever I wanted, but she especially spoiled me on that day. She took me to many expensive-looking boutiques and accessory stores. She was about to buy me something, but I told her not to get it because it didn't look any good on me. But the hesitation, she bought it anyway. I remember there were many zeros on the price tag. And that day, I realized my mother's design work had made her a very successful woman, and she was earning a lot of money. Took a break at a ridiculously expensive-looking restaurant that probably charged like 1,000 yen for a glass of orange juice. But my mother clapped her hands and spoke with me with a smile on her face. She asked, Rena, would you like to make your dream come true? When I was in kindergarten, my teacher gave students a topic to draw a picture of. The topic was my dream, and I drew myself eating a mountain of fruit parfait all by myself. What my mother meant to say was that she was going to make that dream come true for me. It was a normal day. It wasn't my birthday or anything. But since my mother always spoiled me when we went out together, I didn't feel awkward about it at all, and I accepted her offer with a happy smile. There were 5 or 6 of fruit parfaits in front of me. I remember it looked exactly like the world I drew, and I felt like I was floating on in that dream world. It was too much for us to finish, but we dug our spoons into it as if we were playing in the mud, and we really enjoyed eating it together. It was my first time to experience getting full by eating only food parfaits, and I remember I was very happy. I enjoyed tasting the happiness and chatting with my mother. Rena-chan, do you remember the man who went to the movie and had dinner with us last time? Are you talking about Uncle Akihito? Oh, though I can't call him that or he's gonna hit me. Rena-chan, do you like Akihito-san? I hate him. He always teases me. It's because he likes you. Got along well with him at the barbecue? Well, I get along with him every now and then. Every now and then. My mother left. I didn't know why she brought up the subject, but I didn't really pay attention to it because I was too young. Now that I think about it, she was breaking the news. I just didn't notice it. Rena-chan, who do you like better? Your father or me? You. It wasn't that I hated my father or anything, but I thought giving her that answer was appropriate after she spoiled me so much. If I said I'm going to live in another house away from your father, which of us would you like to live with? What, huh? I'm thinking about divorcing your father and getting married to Akihito-san. At that time, my mother was a very successful woman. I didn't know this at the time, but she was drafted by a headhunter to work at a bigger company where she was promoted to a higher, more responsible position where she could bring out the most of her talent. Of course, the position wasn't the only thing she gained. Compared to my father's low salary, my mother was earning enough money to support a family of 3 and still have some left over. I kind of realized it from the way she spent money. The greater a position she achieved, the more she spent time with people at her level. All of them were bright and talented. Compared to them, my father might have looked unattractive to her. I liked Uncle Akihito, but I liked him as one of my mother's friends, not in the same way I liked my father. I liked my father and mother equally, so it was very shocking to me that my mother wanted to divorce him. I felt as if the ground below me was beginning to crack. That expression, I realized, actually fit my situation very well. I had to choose which side of the cracked ground I wanted to stand on. My mother told me to live with her at her new house. Her new house meant the house Uncle Akihito lived in. I thought a house was a sanctuary for a family. I believed that a house was a holy place where strangers couldn't easily enter. That was why I couldn't believe her. How could she let a stranger invade such a holy place so easily? Why do you hate my father? My mother looked down and didn't answer. I asked her another question. Why can't you stay with my father? I think that was the hardest and the most heartbreaking of all questions for a mother to answer. In short, my mother had cheated on him. She loved another man who was more attractive than my father. He was just that another more. I knew more than anybody that it wasn't my father's fault. First of all, he decided to move from Amazera to support my mother as much as he could. For him, nothing good had come from that. Actually, I think he had a very tough time since we moved to Ibaraki, but he volunteered to be her support and tried very hard to do that. I thought my mother appreciated his support. So, I took her decision as a betrayal. I told her that I disagreed with everything, including their divorce. I said it very loudly and made everybody in the store jump. Sure, continue your relationship with Uncle Akihito, but don't divorce my father. I feel bad for him. I feel terrible for him. He has been doing nothing but support you patiently this whole time. How could you do such a cruel thing to him? I screamed as loud as I could, and my mother answered, It's too late. Why? You haven't talked with my father about this, have you? It's not too late. I'm pregnant. I don't know whether my mother actually told him about the divorce in person. A middle-aged woman who called herself a lawyer came to the house several times to talk to my father on my mother's behalf. She sometimes called him too. My father begged the Lord to let him speak directly to my mother many times, but it never happened. I could tell by the way they talked that he had no clue when my mother told him she wanted a divorce. Well, again, I'm not even sure if she told him in person. The lawyer told him not to meet my mother, not to call her at work, and many other things too. To top it all off, she told him not to see my mother ever again. He wanted to talk to her. He called some of their mutual friends, but he only found out the name of the guy she was having an affair with and nothing more. He asked me, "Do you know the guy?" I told him I do. I also told him that he was a funny guy and had given me candy many times. I'll never forget how he looked when I told him that. He hit me for the first time. He hit me so hard that his handprint stayed on my cheek for a while. Then he fell to the floor and cried loudly, and then I started to cry too. I didn't cry because he hit me. Uncle Akihito was kind to me, so I liked him and taught him out of courtesy. That wasn't it. Girls had to be kind to everybody. That's what I thought. But I was wrong. I learned in this world that there are people you should be nice to and enemies you shouldn't be nice to. The enemies are the ones who will destroy my life with their very existence. Whether they mean to harm me or not doesn't matter. They're like weeds growing in a flower bed. Dandelions are innocent, but they take all the nutrition for the tulips from the soil. That's why we have to pull them out. The dandelions did nothing wrong, but they're the enemy. Enemies are bad people. That guy was a bad person. I shouldn't have accepted him. I should have rejected him with everything I had. By doing so, I might have been able to usurp their relationship. By doing so, I might have been able to make my mother feel like their relationship was not going to work. If I tried to do so, my parents wouldn't have had to break up. My father and I cried together, but we cried for different reasons. We must have cried because it happened so fast and didn't make any sense to him. I cried because I regretted that I let it happen when I had the chance to prevent it. My father stroked my cheek and opened his mouth to apologize, but he couldn't speak and just cried with me. One day the lawyer let me see my mother. My mother asked me to live with her at our house again. I didn't know what to say, so I just kept looking down and listening to her apologies. My father knew that I was going to see my mother on that day, so he handed me a letter and told me to give it to her. I don't know what he wrote in that letter, but for some reason I was able to imagine what kind of things he wrote when I felt it through the envelope. After all, the letter inside the envelope had a rough surface. He must have been crying while writing the letter, and his tears made the letter all wrinkled when it dried. My mother took the letter from me, told me that she'd read it later, and was about to put it in her bag. I stopped her and told her to read it there. I wanted to see how she was going to take the last words that my father had left for her. But my mother didn't read it. She told me she wanted to read it alone later, and she put it in her bag. At that time, I realized it was more than that. I should say, I knew, because it was so obvious. I knew that my mother was lying. She had no intention of reading my father's letter. She was going to throw it away after I was gone, but she lied just because she wanted to seem like a nice person in front of me. The slight curl in her eyebrows and lips told me that more clearly than anything else. At that moment, I finally knew something else. The guy she was having an affair with wasn't the only bad person. My mother. She was also a bad person. Since that moment, the existence of my mother disappeared from my world like dry ice evaporating. I didn't have to hesitate about whom to live with anymore. I don't want to go to your house. The Hugo house is my home. I don't want to see you anymore. Please, don't even call me. But Rena, if you live with your father, you won't have... That moment, I hated my name for the first time in my life. Please, don't call me Rena ever again. I have to go now. Goodbye. Those were My last words to my mother. No, to the woman who used to be my mother. After that, I spent many days without feeling anything. I didn't know if the days were long or short. I didn't know which season I was living in. It was supposed to be nothing out of the ordinary not having my mother around. But every time my father saw things that reminded him of her, like a toothbrush, her teacup, or her favorite books, he shed tears, which left me frustrated. That's why I decided to completely remove her belongings from the house. I roughly threw her things into a black trash bag. I started to do so frantically. By the time I knocked down her wardrobe, threw her music box hard on the floor, and broke a mirror, my mind was already not working properly. When I try to remember what happened after that, I feel disoriented. And it's because the pills the doctor gave me back then made me feel disoriented and lethargic every time I took them. It seems that dullness hit me especially hard, since every time I try to remember that time, it makes me feel disoriented and lethargic just like the pills made me feel. I destroyed everything that spelled like my mother, but the thing I wanted destroyed the most might have been myself. Even after I threw all belongings away, I still couldn't stop feeling regret, and I decided to blame myself in the end. Maybe I was thinking that I wanted to do damage to her reputation and successful life by destroying her daughter, destroying myself. When I was about to reach that very last resolution, Oishiro-sama came to me. Oishiro-sama told me to go back to Hinamizawa. Yeah, all of this was because of his curse. Oishiro-sama brought a curse upon the Ryuga family because we broke his rule and abandoned Hinamizawa. After I figured that out, everything started to make sense to me. All the crazy things that happened after my mother was gone. The curse of Oishiro-sama did all of that to us. It was Oishiro-sama's voice that was telling us to come back to Hinamizawa. That's right. We should have stayed in Hinamizawa. Everything went crazy because we moved. We had to go back to Hinamizawa. I started feeling disoriented again, and a dull pain ran through my head. It might be a scream from within me telling me not to push myself too hard to remember any further. The house where we used to live in Hinamizawa was still there. My grandma already passed away, and the house was the only property she left for us. I remembered that I used to live in Hinamizawa, but all I remembered was that it was a village that I used to live in until right before I went to elementary school. I remembered the atmosphere of the village too, but that was all I remembered. I forgot the streets and even the names of close friends I used to play with. The neighbors knew that the son of the deceased woman had come back divorced, but they didn't know us and we didn't know them. So it was almost like we moved to a new place. However, as far as I was concerned, it still was my hometown that I had to come back to. At first, everything was inconvenient compared to life in Ibaraki, and it was hard for both of us to adjust, but we renovated the old house and it was only me and my father. Life here seemed to make my father forget his pain from the divorce. Michan was very kind to me, and I started to get used to my new life too. I did everything around the house, and we gradually went back to a time when we used to live happily. Anyone can live a happy life. People sometimes say that some people are born to be unhappy, but I believe that's just an excuse for people who don't even want to try. I won't give in to fate. I'll never give up trying to recapture the happy times that I lost. I'm going to become happy to the point where I don't even feel the happiness anymore. I'm not going to cry anymore. I'll never cry again. I used up all of my tears on that night my father hit me. The curse of Oishiro-sama is over because we came back to Hinamizawa, so I'm going to have a happy life from now on. All of a sudden, big raindrops hit the roof of the car and I recovered my senses. It was still raining hard. It had already gotten dark outside. The shadows of the table lamp crib were very dark, and it looked as if there's nothing else around me. If I turned off this light, would everything in this world disappear? I turned off the light. Darkness swallowed me. But the cold air and the sound of rain didn't change a bit, and that made me realize I was still in this world. The curse of Oishiro-sama. Did the curse of Oishiro-sama do those crazy things in my family? or that I convinced myself it did as an excuse for myself because I didn't want to feel guilty about the divorce. Sometimes I'm not sure. Since that time, Oshio-sama hasn't come to me. I sometimes feel like it was the illusion I created because I was mentally ill, but he did come at that time. I'm sure about that. Am I right, Oshio-sama? I was unhappy after I left in Amazawa, but I came back and I'm happy now. But where am I supposed to go now that I'm unhappy in Amazawa? Where? Stop it, Rena. Don't think that you're unhappy. I am happy. I will be happy. I can definitely be happy. Suddenly I felt that if this darkness swallowed me, I'd never be able to be happy again. I found the switch of the table lamp and turned it back on. When I looked at the clock, it was already past 11 p.m. I had to go home. I wouldn't have time to prepare my lunch for tomorrow. At least I'd have to set the timer on the rice cooker. It didn't look like the rain was going to stop anytime soon. I looked out the window to see the rain, but could only see my reflection. I talked to that reflection in the window. I'm so glad that my father's happy. He'd been acting like he was dead for a long time. The smile on his face is a good sign that he's regaining his former happy life. He'd become miserable because of me. That's why I don't mind doing things for him until he regains his smile and we become truly happy. When I stay here alone for a while, it gives him some time to be alone with her. Plus, I don't have to fake a smile. But then, my reflection in the window tells me, Rena, you're such a good girl. You're kind to everybody and love them equally. You can make anybody like you. But did you forget something? In this world, there are people you should be kind to. And enemies that you have to reject with all you've got. I thought you learned that lesson. No, don't listen to her. My reflection is always mean. She always says mean things and makes fun of my words, but she always tells me things that I can't say myself. Let's go home, Rena. So you're home. Forget about the mean Rena in the mirror. I was a bit hungry by then. After all the desserts I ate, I still got hungry. I almost forgot. Rena-san bought me a shortcake. I've never had a shortcake from Major Malt, but I bet it'll taste good. I'd have to give my thanks to Rena-san the next time I see her. Rena-san speaks in a way that makes it very clear how she grew up, but I'm sure she's a good person. It's because she's so good to my father. I did everything I could to make my father smile, but I failed. On the other hand, Rena-san could put a big smile on his face so easily. I have to thank Rena-san. I have to thank her for cheering up my father. But I don't know why. I just don't like her perfume. There you go.
That's a very peculiar note to end on.
Yeah, her perfume. That's weird. Shortcakes and perfume.
There you go, episode title, we've done it.
Well, I mean, it was one of the achievement titles.
Oh, you're right.
We can still steer it. We can steal it.
I'm pretty sure
I don't
we
mind.
did already.
Don't call me Rena.
Ugh.
You know, a little creepy face, because she's totally sane human being who doesn't hear voices, has no mental problems. Don't worry about it.
That is a very
Yay!
bright panel.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's like Nega Diary. Let's do it. Today, I went to a swimming pool with my mom. Uncle Akihito came with us too. I don't like him because he's sometimes mean to me, but he's a very kind and funny old man. He told me to call him Daddy for that day because he was going to play with me at the pool like he was my daddy. My mom called him Daddy, so I did too. Uncle Akihito looked very happy and gave me a lot of money. My mom looked very happy and it made me happy too. I want to play with him again. I hope my dad can come with us next time.
That was astoundingly brief.
That was very brief. Yeah.
There's been a few brief tips this arc.
Yeah, just little, like, snapshots.
Alright.
Let's do the
last tip.
Yes, let's do the next tip.
I'm assuming this is another one of, sitting on a mountaintop looking out at the wilderness.
Like some kind of Buddhist monk?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
so,
it's a good thing that I haven't already read this before.
Yeah, it's a good thing that this isn't the third take.
I'm just saying! Ryukishi, you're making it hard for me and I can't understand! And I want points for it! I want 1 point per page.
Well, we already tried to take 20 points for this scene.
Can't we take them anyway?
So if this is more than 20, we will take 20.
It's not going to be more than 20. It's not. It's like 10 pages.
But we'll take 1 a page otherwise.
Yay! All
Let's
right,
go.
sounds good. I opened the window, placed my cushion nearby, and prepared to enjoy the weather. But she came over and disrupted my peaceful evening. She always ruins my time of solitude. You look pleased. Oh, that's right. You ate lots of your favorite sweets today. This girl loves sweets more than anything. I like them too, but I can't eat lots like she does. It'd give me heartburn if I ate the amount she ate today. She seemed to be very happy, so I'll leave her alone for a while. I've been making my favorite hot and salty food for the past few days, so she must be quite pleased today. It was a very fun day for me too. I just wanted to enjoy the memory of the excitement I felt today by sitting here quietly, enjoying the sunset. When I looked up at the sky, I saw some thick clouds forming there. The wind was a bit cooler than usual. It might start raining soon. People say that when deep-sea animals come up to the shallows, it's a sign of a big earthquake or a tsunami. What is that? Is that the tsunami?
Probably.
We saw a very rare fish that dwells in deep water in the shallows today. Just as the ancient stories of sea monsters say, people hate deep-sea animals and tend to interpret them as omens of a disaster. It didn't matter if they showed up alive or dead. Ah, I said something interesting just now. Even if they showed up alive or dead, it was an omen of disaster.
That's right. Crustaceans, how dare you?
How dare you be alive or dead and exist? Oh, it might start raining soon. Yeah, I know. You don't have to tell me. I'll get the laundry. I grabbed a basket and went outside to take the laundry in. The clouds were getting darker. I normally like rain, but I didn't think I'd enjoy it today. Well, there you go. That was
How
a
incredibly
weird
ominous.
tip. A very weird tip that confused me for like half an hour. It's been like half an hour since the last tip of this one because I was like, "What's happening? Who's talking?"
I don't even know how long this episode is
Rico?
anymore because we spent so long working on that.
I mean, we should probably keep going.
Should we? But I have so much to say.
Oh, do you want to say things?
No, I don't know. I've found that entire sequence with Rena very interesting.
Good. I'm glad. I wasn't sure if you'd be like, I found it very boring. That was awful. I don't know.
Like,
what were your feelings?
Feelings, none.
No,
Non-existent.
good.
Thoughts, many.
Okay. Tell me, detective, what have you deduced as the heartless puzzle solver that you are that doesn't care about people's
apparently
feelings and
my
traumas?
way of approaching life is poison.
true.
I've been poisoning myself for years. I feel attacked. Rena, I guess I do have feelings. That's the feeling. I feel attacked by Rena.
There you go. I'm glad.
Rena's inner monologue has
Rena.
assailed me.
I mean, she's lovely. What can I say?
Yes.
She's the only person with the strength enough to attack you emotionally. I could do that. Yeah.
No, but it is, like, I know in cases of, like, divorce like that, kids will often blame themselves when really there is, like, nothing that can be done.
Yep.
At least on their side of the equation.
I will say, I have no experience of divorce. This is one thing that I do not, I'm not with Rena on this, you know. But I do, again, deeply empathize with the idea of blaming yourself for something that you had no control over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rena talks a lot about how, you know, her mom's giving these decisions and her father's hitting her and they're like all acting like fucked up people.
Yeah.
And there's clearly a lot of trauma that Rena has to deal with.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about that to me is that, like, particularly for kids in a divorce, it always tends to come to kids who aren't old enough to understand the emotions that could ever lead to it.
Yeah.
Which is why it's a particularly difficult thing for kids to grapple with.
For sure.
Like, and, you know, the way that Rena's, like, trying to rationalize it and say, like, oh, if I'd only done this, and then also, like, how she's come to cope with it now.
Yeah.
Like, there's an interesting conflict in her emotions then versus emotions now.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very authentic.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, yeah, the strongest thing here is that we get this flashback, this very pointed flashback about her, family history, and showing how that still affects her actions now is like, I think is really well done. I like that it's just been kind of simmering under the surface. Like, you've even made some comments, I think, on like, it's weird that we don't get to see Rena's family when like they're the only other character that we haven't seen the family of, like, at this point of the story. By the point in the answer arcs, like, we've met some of the Sonozakis, many of the Sonozakis technically. We know that Sadako and Rika don't really have a family except each other, and we've obviously seen Keiichi's parents. But Rena's family situation has been very pointedly kept out of the picture. And this like flashback is just like a big info dump of what's going on there, right?
Yeah, which is definitely a bit peculiar because, like, on the one hand, as you say, it's like it's been foreshadowed and it's also entirely the point.
Yeah.
But it is like, of all of the thematics to drop so abruptly, it's a very
strange,
like very intense choice to drop so late in the story.
Intense is a good word for it, I think. But again, I think that's the point where, like, you have someone who's like trying to put on a brave face, having a great time, but on the inside they're like, holy shit, I have all this trauma. I think that most people can relate to that, at least in some capacity.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, to me, that's kind of the point of Rena as a character. In all of the like previous arcs, she's been shown to be a very capable person, a smart person, somebody who's like trying to, help whoever's in trouble. Not in Arc 1, of course. Mostly Arcs 2 and 3.
Of course. Arc 1, she wasn't trying to help anyone.
In Arc 1, she was, horribly evil and all
very
that stuff.
evil.
But, she's been shown as being someone who, like, wants to help other people. And in my mind, that's motivated by these mistakes. She talks about how Sadashigun, like, disappeared and she didn't do enough to help him and, like, all this family stuff. I think that the point of Rena being there is to show that you can have this character who is, very upbeat most of the time, but also has these very serious moments. She says, my best friend is a murderer and I accept that. Now let's see if my other best friend can go into a murder hole and try and fix them. But she can be so casual and yet so serious. She can like seem so carefree on the outside. And like, that's when Keiichi, he looked at her face and said, I could tell just by looking at Rena that she was happy. And, that might be true on the outside. There's that part of her that's happy, but there's also that part that is deeply traumatized and, dare I say, probably depressed. Like, that is why I appreciate her inclusion in the story. And it's very much in vibe with, like, the whole structure of Higurashi. That you have the first half being these happy fun time games, and the second half is murder times, right? And as I say again, when I was reading or watching Higurashi for the first time, that was something I was really craving. Something that could show me that you could have these really, like, in my mind, sappy messages, all these really, like, upbeat stories, and yet still be compelling and serious and, like, realistic. And I think that that's something that Rena is really showing us here, is that we can have this very grounded story about this girl who's talking to her reflection in the mirror, and yet we can see exactly where that's come from. I don't know, she just feels really human to me.
Yeah, I was thinking while you were saying that as well.
Yeah, go for it.
I do wonder how much, like, someone in a different position to us could say the same things about last arc.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Because I don't feel like this arc so far is any intrinsically better written than last arc.
Maybe not.
And admittedly, we're only like, fucking 3 or 4 videos in.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have much to go on here, but it's very interesting exploring the subjectivity of that.
Yeah. That's why I say, like, I've mainly talked about this in YouTube comments, but it might just be that I don't gel with the extremity of what Shion, does in the end.
Yeah.
The fact that she has this, like, calculated, in the part that we just uploaded as of today, she says, oh no, they're talking about Tommy Take Flash and Takano. I'm next. Time to zap my granny and my sister.
That wasn't today's video?
Was it today's video?
No, that was back. You're losing track.
Am I losing track? I've lost track of time. Anyway, my point is, that like that escalation to me doesn't feel like something that I would do. Whereas the things that Rena is going through, the things that she's thinking, I have had very similar thoughts in the past. And we will talk more about that as we go forward. I have lots of fun personal anecdotes to talk about.
I'm
it's
the
going to be
cold
great.
calculating one, so I should
I
be
know.
relating
This
to
is
Shion.
this is the thing, isn't it?
God.
You can be Arc 5 and I'll be Arc 6, and then we'll
don't even
all
have like a good
fight.
torture bunker to be like...
You need to make one. That's your job.
That's going to
your,
be the
like,
thing that finally makes me connect with
Although,
Higurashi.
to be fair, Shion didn't make the torture bunker. She just knew that her family had one. So you need to find your family's torture bunker.
I mean, I probably have one. It's probably somewhere in the family.
Yeah.
I'll ask. I'll ask my relatives.
Go back up the family tree. Find the one that used to be like a Nazi or I'm just saying. One of them probably was. What are the chances that look, I'm just saying, go back to your family tree. What are the chances that no one in your family tree was a Nazi?
I'm way too, like, British.
You're saying the British can't be Nazis? Okay, that's a weird train of thought.
Let's abandon this.
Abandon ship!
And instead of making this video longer, leave it on that thought.
Alrighty.
Thank you for joining
British
us.
Nazis. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening to me ramble. It's good stuff.
Yes. Vote for Ben as the party leader of the National Socialist Party of Australia.
With Rena. Rena is our mascot.
In the upcoming elections.
Yay, let's do it. We can do it. Go for it. Yay.
Cut that.